Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a very special episode of the Loan Officer Wealth Podcast. We have Parker Couch with us, and this is our first ever mobile episode. We know roughly 75% of our listeners are in the car while listening to the podcast, and Parker is a hustler and he is on the road, but we are very lucky to have him on the podcast. Parker, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Chris, for having me on. Big fan of the show. And yeah, I'm sorry for being difficult and having to come in from you live inside of my very nice Uber car. My Uber driver is doing a great job, keeps a clean car. So yeah, I'm on the way to the airport, about to fly into Atlanta and hopefully drum up some more business for August and September.
That is amazing. And 5 stars for the Uber driver.
That's right.
And so I want to preface today's episode because Parker is a phenomenal loan officer and an incredible individual. And when I met Parker, he had just joined the mortgage industry. He was a brand new loan officer. And on top of all that, he had picked up from his home state where he had all of his connections, moved his family to an entire new city in an entirely new state, brand new to the mortgage industry, had no past customer database, had no realtors that would send him business, and really had no network to lean into in this brand new city. So
Yeah, that's a great summary. It actually sounds a lot harder than it felt at the time. So I'm glad I just heard that summary now instead of then.
right? So when we don't know it's hard, it's not hard. But then Parker, why don't you tell the story of what it was like to land in a brand new city, no realtor contacts, and preface the fact that when you came to us, it was to join the concierge program because you wanted appointments with realtors but didn't want to make the calls. So we put together a qualified list of realtors, started making calls.
Yep.
Take us from there.
Yeah. So like you were saying, Chris, I was born and raised in the Atlanta area, and then my wife and I met, and we're both educators, teachers in Memphis, Tennessee, for close to 10 years. My wife was born and raised in South Austin. So once we had kiddos, really wanted to relocate and be closer to her family. But yeah, you're right. I mean, not just moving away from Memphis, which we lived in for 10 years and absolutely loved, but moving to Austin, where she had some connections, but hadn't been there for over a decade. And me, really, I've only been to Austin for Thanksgivings and Christmases over the years. It was really daunting and overwhelming. It's daunting and overwhelming to move just in general, but to move and then put a career change on top of that is a lot. I think that especially coming from the perspective of a career changer, I was a teacher and then I was an administrator of an all boys public charter school in Memphis. It felt at first a little bit like going quote unquote backwards. I'm in my 30s, and anytime you switch careers is scary. But when you're doing it in your 30s, when you're supposed to be at the quote unquote peak of your professional life, that's even more intimidating. But it really was a perfect storm where my dad has been in the business for decades. The joke is, it's not even really a joke. I think my dad originated his first loan when Jimmy Carter was president. If it wasn't Jimmy Carter, it was definitely Reagan's first term. So he's been, my dad, his name's Wendell, has been in the business for a really long time and grew up around it. And then when COVID hit, obviously being an educator is always really challenging, rewarding, but very challenging. But COVID was pretty brutal. My wife had just started her own business. We needed some flexibility. I was pretty miserable because I'm a really relational person. And so being stuck at home behind a computer screen all the time, it was just not working. And so dad recruited me, said, "Hey, get licensed." I was like, "Well, I'm not moving back to Georgia, I'm moving to Austin." And he said, "That's fine. We're going to open up a branch in Texas." And so there were two things that I knew I needed to immediately do when not just switching careers, but moving from, the world, like the ed world, to a commission based dog eat dog, eat what you kill kind of world. And that was one, I needed to be incredibly upfront about where I was in my career. I never wanted to do any type of smoke and mirrors and make realtors or other referral partners think that I was a super experienced person. So that was one, is like be authentic to my experience level. But then two is, and this, point number two is be authentic and be unapologetic about the transferable skills from, in my experience, the ed world that I felt like was going to really make me excel as an originator. And so that's where you guys come in. Is I knew that in starting from scratch, there was no sexy way of doing it. It was just going to have to be a lot of cold calling, and I was going to have to just call a bunch of realtors. And then that's when my dad connected me to y'all, and this idea of having Lenny, who's my concierge, and I know you know Lenny well, to actually one, not just call realtors, but for Lenny, you and your team to get for me a really high quality list of realtors, and then to call these realtors and to get them booked to my calendar. That just, I mean, it saved me hundreds of hours right out of the gate. And then that allowed me to kind of cut to the chase. It's almost like instead of going on a first date, you kind of get to start dating someone on the fourth or fifth date. Which that's not nothing, especially when you're trying to get traction as quickly as you possibly can. And so was able to start talking to realtors, was authentic to my experience, was authentic to where I felt like I was going to be able to be immediately where, to be honest, I was trying to just get in front of realtors and have them understand like what part of my transferable skills were going to transfer really well over to this new world of originating. It was going to make me a really effective loan officer. And being able to skip that first date and go straight to the fourth or fifth date was, I mean, like I said, not only just saved me hundreds of hours, but was able to get me to a spot to where in my first year, I was able to, I think I was right at 18 million in volume. So well over, 3, 4 transactions a month. And then my second year was, a little bit over 30 in volume. And this was during, COVID when refis were happening, but purchases were really tight. And I really think a large part of why I was able to be successful right out of the gate is because I didn't have to burn hundreds and hundreds of hours trying to get in front of a realtor. That when I was talking to a realtor, they were ready to actually meet me, hear what I had to say, and I was able to take it from there.
That is amazing. And so we're setting the appointments for you. And just to give kind of the lay of the land for the listeners, like roughly how many appointments per month were getting put on your calendar when you landed and you just started networking with realtors right away? Like roughly how many appointments per month?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think so. When we were in the middle of the COVID craziness and everybody was really crazy, I would say probably 2 to 3 appointments a week. So that's about 12, anywhere between 8 to 14 appointments or phone calls that were happening a month. What was interesting though, which was great, but what was interesting though, Chris, is once rates like tripled in October, if you remember back to, I guess 2022, rates tripled in like a matter of 45 days. All of a sudden, instead of panicking, we continued to, do the concierge service, and those realtor bookings actually started to take up because realtors all of a sudden weren't as busy. And
Yeah.
so then it started, instead of it going from 2 to 4 appointments a week, it was doubling, tripling some weeks to where I was having, 20 to 30 conversations a month. And obviously, when interest rates came down a little bit, people got used to them and the market heated back up. I was so grateful to have really leaned in during that October, November, and December because to this day, two of my largest referral partners, just in terms of the amount of volume I closed based on my relationship with those two partners, were all connection concierge booked phone calls that happened in October, November, and December during the quote unquote slow time. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it really kind of depends on what part of the market we're in. But even when the market's slow, that's actually when I found the service to be not just equally as valuable. You could argue that it was even more.
And I feel like building the pipeline, especially with realtors and referral partners, it is a long game. It's a long tail. It's
Right.
building the relationships now so that you get the deals in the future. I'm very interested in how you run those appointments and how you get those realtors to send you business. But before we get into that, the last time that we spoke, you had 26 realtors that were actively sending you business as a result of the connections. Do you have a rough idea of how many realtors you currently have that are actively sending you business?
Oh goodness. I would say we're probably between 25 and 30.
Having enough volume coming from those realtors that you've been able to hire a loan officer and fill their pipeline with volume from the referral relationships that you've got is just absolutely incredible. So
Absolutely.
Parker, one of the things that you're very good at across our customer base, one of the things that we get asked for a lot is like, okay, you've got me all these appointments with top performing realtors. We're only calling people that are doing volume. We set the appointments. The loan officer doesn't know what to say when they get to the appointment. How do I
Right.
get that person to send me business? So, how do you approach your appointments, and how have you gotten so many of these realtors to send you business, even with you really still being relatively new to the mortgage industry?
Yeah, great question. I think that it is it is that if you're starting out as a loan officer or just any kind of sales based field, uh, really lean into the no's, lean into the uncomfortable conversations because those are going to happen. You are going to have realtors who are like, yeah, hard no for me. And some will just be downright rude. And that is okay because a lot of reasons why folks don't cold call is because they're afraid of rejection.
Yeah,
But honestly, kind of seek out the moments of rejection because they'll just get you comfortable and then you can actually get to the good stuff.
I
So,
love
with that being said, the ones that go really well, um, I've kind of like I've really simplified my swing, and I think it's gotten more effective. And really, it just comes from this. All right, so Chris, a quick detour. So, have you been following how well the movie Barbie has done?
No.
Yeah, so the movie Barbie, right, is it everyone was when it was announced, it was on track to make like 40-50 million dollars opening weekend. And then that's when Warner Brothers marketing department came in and did this year-long marketing campaign. It was really innovative. So Barbie actually has made its first 5 days $180 million. It's one of the largest grossing movies in years. And I was listening to a podcast by the guy who ran the marketing campaign, and he essentially said two things when approaching that. And I was like, oh, this is exactly what I at least hope that I'm doing with my best calls. One is define what you're not,
Hmm.
which I thought was really interesting. Don't define what you are, define what you're not. And then two is uh, keep interest to the person that you're trying to market to. So define what you're not and then try to generate interest. So the way that I define what I'm not is I immediately tell people, I said, hey, just so you know, at the end of this call, you and I may not work together. Honestly, there might be a likelihood that it's probably a greater chance that I can't bring value to your business. You can't bring value to my business. And that is totally okay. But I just want you to know that even if this phone call ends with us not working together, this phone call is not going to end with me asking you for money, which kind of sounds simple and funny, but you just have to realize that realtors, as well as lenders, they get spammed so hard for
Yeah.
quote unquote free services. And there's always a catch, always a catch. And so I define like, hey, I'm not going to ask you for money at the end of this call. The horse in the race is I just want an opportunity to bring to your business a valuable service. And then where I get the benefit is I get FaceTime with clients because they legally don't have to use me as their lender. But I do get an opportunity to present myself and I get a crack at the audience because in the day it's the realtor that's 9 times out of 10 sending the business to the lender. But then the other thing that I get to do, and I'll tell them this, is like you almost certainly, based on your production, already have a lender you're working with. But the other reason I want to do this free service for you is so that I can do the hard loan to show you just how good I am. That way, you'll start sending me the easy loans too.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I start, right? As I say, one, I'm not going to ask you for money. Two, this is what I've been getting. Because if you just say that on the front end, I found that realtors can relax and actually have a conversation with you because they know the conversation is not going to end with you asking for money. They also know the conversation is not going to end without them knowing exactly what you, the loan officer, are going to gain from that conversation. And then in terms of piquing interest, that's where I say, hey, so do you have a preferred lender? I'm assuming you do. And they almost always say yes. I say, awesome. All right. So walk me through what makes them your preferred lender. Like, what are they doing? And then you just kind of give them an opportunity to tell you. Now, the easy ones is say, well, I have a preferred lender because my broker may use them, but I can't stand it. Well, that's just like fish in a barrel. But sometimes they say, oh, well, I've got a lender that I've used for 20 years. We go to church together, godmother to my kids. And so then I'm like, all right, I'm not going to be their preferred lender. And if I am, it's going to be a miracle. But then I'll say, okay, so it sounds like you've got a really amazing preferred lender. What are some products or programs that you wish they offered that they don't?
Yep.
And then the conversation becomes more of me pivoting to like, all right, is there a program or product that their preferred lender can't offer? And 9 times out of 10, based on the company I'm with, we actually can't offer that product. If we don't, I can broker it out.
Yep.
So that's really kind of it. Is I define what I'm not. I'm not going to ask for money. I also let them know how I'm going to gain partnering. Having service where he's going to be working their hot and or cold leads. So it's a free service that brings value to your business. And then I'm asking them if they have a preferred lender. And if they do, which they almost certainly will, is, why is that your preferred lender? And they say that it's their preferred lender because, super value prop. I'll talk about why they want to work with me. But even if they do have a lender that they really, really like, um, it's still an opportunity for me to get business because I've got a wide variety of programs and products I can offer.
Yeah. That is amazing. Parker, that is incredible. And thank you for sharing. And thank you for being so generous with your time.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
awesome.
Appreciate
So
the
I
invite.
know we have a limited amount. So I'll wrap with one final question. But you've been on the concierge program for I believe 2 years now.
Yeah.
Coming up on. Do you have a rough idea of like how much volume you've been able to produce as a result of those referral relationships?
So let's see, so 40. I would say I don't want to lose my audio, so I get my calculator out. So over 2 years of volume, probably at around between 45 to 50 million. Um, Out of that, and I'm going to be conservative here, I would say easily 70% of that volume has come from direct referrals from realtor partners I was connected to through the concierge program. So whatever 70% of 45 to 50 million is, that's how much, I'm indebted to Connection Inc.
Well, I think it goes the other way around because we are super thankful for your business and to work with somebody that takes those appointments and really does the follow up and closes it. I think we're a great partnership. So that works out
I
great.
agree. And I'm excited to build up with this new company. I had to start my branch P&L over from scratch. And I'm excited to have another good year so that I can increase my services because there are plenty of fish in the ocean. Just gotta go get them.
That's it. Awesome. Well, Parker, congratulations on your success again. Thank you so much for being on the show and all the best and safe travels.
Thanks so much, Chris. Talk to you soon.